Howdy, everybody. Tekking101 here, and we got something unique today. We got something pretty special that Oda went and did for the 20th year anniversary of the One Piece manga, which, by the way, next week we're going to have chapter 872 released, and that chapter is going to be released on, like, the same day as the original One Piece, chapter 1, way back in 1997. So it's going to be like a perfect 20 years from chapter 1 to chapter 872. So that's going to be cool. We're going to get, like, a whole color spread, and I don't know what special events that Oda might put in that chapter, but it's going to be pretty sweet. But in the meantime, Oda went and did something else for us because, you know, he does love his fans. You gotta love that. He really does, he does spoil us sometimes. He went ahead and drew a very specific what-if scenario in One Piece, as in that he went back through his story, through his manga, and he drew a panel in a different way than it was conceived of the first time around. So, do you guys remember this? Remember this little scene in One Piece? It was a footnote, really. You know, that one time that Ace got, you know, a superheated magma 1300 degree fist shoved through his chest cavity. Yeah, remember that little scene? You know, maybe a little bit integral into the development of Luffy's character. Maybe a little bit, you know, integral in Luffy deciding to become stronger and heightens the 2-year time skip and everything like that. Yeah, that was kind of a sad moment there. And by the way, the reason I always make fun of that is to kind of lighten the mood because I'm not still sure if I'm over it yet. Hey, remember that time Ace got fisted, guys? That was really fun, wasn't it? Oh god, Ace, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. But yeah, Oda might have sensed a little bit of people that still haven't quite recovered from that traumatic moment. So remember at the end of Dressrosa when we find out that Sabo is still alive and he's recanting the story of why he couldn't save Ace, because at the time he was suffering from amnesia, and he was like, I didn't remember who Ace and Luffy was until after Ace had already died. That's when he was reading the newspaper. He found out that Ace had died, and that awoke in, like, seeing Ace's, you know, corpse in the, you know, newspaper. That freaking, like, shocked him back to reality, and he remembered who he was and who Ace and Luffy were. But in the what-if scenario here, this is pretty sweet. We get to see Sabo arriving at Marineford and saving Ace at the last possible second. We see him arrive there, jump in. Not only Ace, but he also grabs Luffy. Because remember, Luffy, the whole reason that Ace got fisted was because he was trying to protect Luffy. Remember that. Luffy was on the ground and he couldn't move. You know, his body was pretty much wrecked at that point. And then Akainu shows up and he's like, die! And then, you know, Ace shows up at the last second and protects Luffy. And that's, you know, with a whole traumatic moment. So Sabo shows up, you know, I guess, you know, uses Soru or some high-speed movement, whatever, jumps in at the last second, grabs Ace and Luffy, and gets them out of the range of Akainu's death punch, his 5-finger death punch, so to speak. This is just one panel of it. We got a full version here. I couldn't find a full translated version, but I'm assuming they're saying pretty much the same stuff they're saying at the beginning. I mean, back at the, you know, in Marineford in the story, up until when Sabo shows up and saves them, and Sabo says something along the lines of, like, I made it just in time, or something like that. So, you know, it's really cool to see this. It's really neat to see the three brothers there, and Ace, of course, being saved from Akainu's rampage. But, you know, I start to think, like, how this would have actually changed the story around. For better or for worse, because Ace's death was, like I said, a central point for Luffy's character. Luffy kind of sort of needed to have that depression in order for him to realize, you know, what he really has and what he can really protect from here on out. Luffy was always such a carefree guy that believed so much in his own strength, and he always felt like, you know, I'm going to protect my friends and stuff like that. And this is kind of a dick thing to say, but Ace's death was sort of like reality slapping Luffy in the face. Like, Luffy, you're not strong enough to protect everybody at all times. People are going to die. and you have to kind of deal with that, and you can't just go with your whole life just thinking that nothing bad's ever going to happen to you. This is the path that you set yourself on, trying to become king of the pirates. You've made enemies out of the world government. You've made enemies out of the Marines. You have to understand the very not rare, but very legitimate possibility that somebody that you care about might get killed. And Luffy couldn't handle that. Luffy couldn't handle Ace's death, and he was freaking out, and he, all the strength that he worked so hard for, he cursed his own powerlessness. He was like, I'm weak, I'm pathetic. It was like, he had one of Perona's ghosts go through him, it's just like, I'm lower than a sea slug, I couldn't protect anyone. And then, of course, you have Jinbei that shows up, and Jinbei, knocks some sensu to him, and tells him, you were so confident, and you were soaring in the skies, but now that Ace is dead, you've just crashed to the ground, and you think you're pathetic. You're not pathetic. There's still people out there that care about you. There's still people out there that there's still worthiness in your life. There's still something out there that, you can get back up on your feet and you can fight for. And this was, of course, Luffy's own crew. So I'm not going to say that the story would have been radically different, Luffy always wants to strive to become stronger. It's just that Ace's death was the impetus for really lighting a fire under Luffy, for really getting him to be like, I need to get stronger, not just for myself, not just for my crew, but in order to be strong enough to protect people after what happened with Ace. So let's go down this line here and see what could have occurred, and I wanted to see, hear your comments below as well, what you think, how this would have changed the One Piece story for better or for worse. So as for the rest of Marineford, let's just assume that Whitebeard still dies, Blackbeard still steals his devil fruit. There's still a major death in One Piece, the death of a Yonko, the death of Whitebeard at the end of Marineford. That would still be pretty impactful to the story, and that could still maintain Blackbeard as his, his title as the new Yonko, and why he's such a bad guy and why Luffy needs to fight him. That's still something there. Sabo saving Ace and Luffy, it's not like the three brothers would all go along and, journey together or anything like that. They still have all their separate things. It's just that Ace and Luffy would find out, like the things that happened at Dressrosa, Luffy finding out Sabo's still alive, Luffy finding out that Sabo's part of the Revolutionary Army and has connections to Dragon. It's the same shit, it would happen a lot earlier in the story. You would still probably see a really, similar moment that happened in Dressrosa with Luffy, his eyes bawling out like, we thought you were dead, and maybe even Ace would start crying as well. I mean, we don't really see Ace as that much of an emotional guy, but I could see him tearing up. There's moments in the story where Oda will draw characters in ways that we don't always see them as. Like, remember that time that Jinbei face faulted when he saw Shirahoshi? Shirahoshi was there and it's like, oh, hello there, mermaid princess. Wait, what? So I could see, Ace getting all tearied up and shit like that too. But after the events of Marineford, considering also that, they didn't just leave Marineford. It wasn't like Luffy just walked out of there, it was a fucking scramble. Everyone had to fucking bail. And if Whitebeard still dies, then it's still gonna be like, okay, we saved Ace, but we still have admirals and fleet admirals and warlords all trying to kill us. We need to get the fuck out of here. Shanks could very well show up. We could still have the scene with Kobe, trying to confront Akainu. Like, enough people have died here, so we could still see Akainu trying to kill Kobe. Shanks shows up, blocks it. The only, it wouldn't be that much of a victory other than the fact of Ace surviving. I mean, yeah, that was the whole point they went to Marineford, was to save Ace, and if Ace survived, I guess victory goes for the pirates. But if Whitebeard still ends up dying, and we have all the deaths of all the other, pirates in the Whitebeard crew and all the other allied pirates, that's still kind of not like a great victory there. I mean, it's a little bit more of a victory for the pirates, but not much. So I could see Luffy still getting the hell out of there, someone like Law still takes him away or something like that, and then, Sabo's like, yeah, great, I'm alive, it's nice to see you guys again, but we gotta get going, we can't, we'll reunite in the new world, we'll meet each other again. Hey, that provides a whole new plot point, like, okay, we know you're alive, but we don't have time to sit down and have tea right now, okay, people are shooting lasers and ice beams at us, we need to go, okay, we'll meet each other later, okay, I promise, we'll see see you again. So Luffy leaves, Ace leaves with the Whitebeard pirates, and then Sabo leaves of his own. You know, he gets out of there in his own way, maybe his own method on how he got there. And then we could still have the moment with Sabo arriving on Dressrosa and teaming up with Luffy. The Whitebeard pirates would be very interesting because, you know, Marco became the de facto leader after Whitebeard died. But now that Ace is still around, I could see, like, you know, Marco and Ace maybe becoming like a dual captain sort of thing. Like they're both like kind of the heads of the Whitebeard crew to kind of put a little bit more terror into it because, you know, Marco's a badass guy and everything, but the Whitebeard pirate crew hasn't had that much luck since Whitebeard's death, you know. All of Whitebeard's territories are now gone. We had, of course, the Payback War, which did not end up very well. But, you know, with Marco and Ace at, like, the captain's chair, that might seem like a little bit more of an intimidating factor there, and we can even maybe see a scene where all the members of the Whitebeard crew kind of look at Ace and be like, you know, Whitebeard, Pops risked his life and gave up his life to try to rescue you, and that you did manage to survive. You should be the next captain of the crew. And I don't see, like, Ace accepting that right away. I don't see Ace being like, no, I can't accept that. I could be like a de facto captain with you, Marco, and maybe Jozu. We can maybe form like a trifecta sort of thing. Am I using trifecta in the right way? I don't know. That's always a cool word, so I used it. But I maybe when Ace gets a little bit older and stronger, maybe someday he might take on those reins as the captain of the crew. But for right now, it's like he wouldn't accept it. I don't think he could accept something like that. Yeah, and then we can have a moment in the new world where we could possibly see Ace and Luffy reuniting. The thing that I'm worried about, though, is that Luffy, you know, would he still do the 2-year time skip thing? I could see him still doing that, realizing, you know, we were still beat the shit at Sabo. We were still beat to shit at Marineford. There were still so many strong people out there. We definitely still need to train to get stronger. But I feel like there'd be a little bit of fire not in Luffy that existed after Ace died. You know, there wouldn't be so much of as a drive to get stronger. They certainly would get stronger, and maybe, you know, even the other Straw Hats, because the other Straw Hats were so worried about Luffy after reading the paper and finding out that Ace had died. And when all the Straw Hats were out there training in the world, like Luffy is there suffering, we need to train to get stronger and be reunited, but all of that wouldn't... I mean, it's like, we need to fight to get stronger for Luffy's sake. Okay, that's great, but I think it was really that emotional damage that really heightened everything to a whole new level there for the crew. They would still be strong, but they just might not be on the exact same level they are right now. So yeah, I hate to be the asshole that's like, Ace had to die, damn it! But it's a cool what-if scenario to think about. What are your guys' opinion on this? And I'm sure there's probably going to be several fan fictions that are going to spawn from this as well. I have another version. This is a colored version of it here, which is pretty sweet. And, you know, just seeing the three brothers together, it's really sweet. We might not get to see that. I mean, we might get a moment in One Piece later on. Maybe we'll see Ace's, like, ghost, not like a legitimate ghost, but like there's a moment maybe when Luffy and Sabo are fighting against like a Yonko or something, and they get their shit beat out of them, and then they see like an image of Ace like in their heads, you know, like, come on guys, stand up, we can do this. And then it's like, all right, we got it, Ace, we got it, okay, we can do this. Maybe something like that, like symbolically, where Oda could still draw all three brothers together. That would be cool. But yeah, I still think, you know, Ace's death served a very critical part in the story, and it's cool to look at this as a what-if. But I still think very much his death was necessary to get where we are in the story today. But anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. I have another video that's going to come up later tonight. It's going to be... I don't want to spoil a lot of it, but it's going to be tits, guys. It's going to be tits. All right, have a good one, guys. Signing out, Homer. Homer? Homies? Partner? That's what I wanted. Signing out, partners on the homestead. I'm not Southern. I don't know why I tried.